Hello, and welcome back to the Conservative Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Ventura. Joining me today is CEN's newest employee, our policy manager, Connor Marley, who joined us this fall. Welcome to the network, Connor.
Hi, Kayla. Thanks so much for having me. And it's so great to be with the network. You guys are a great group of people. And I'm really excited to get to talk to you guys about policy today and get to, answer some of the questions that you have for me. And hopefully everybody leaves with a little bit more than they came to start with.
I love that. Thanks, Connor, and appreciate you being here. I want to start off today, Connor, with having you tell us about your background, what led you to the policy space, and then ultimately what landed you here with the Conservative Energy Network.
Sure. So I started my career about 10 years ago. I was engaging in campaign work. I was doing a lot of grassroots advocacy and talking about the candidate and their policy wins and that kind of a thing. And over the course of my time, I met some wonderful people who brought me along with them to different campaigns, to different roles that really fleshed out my overall understanding of the political arena, but also helped me identify what I was looking for a career path, and what I was looking for was an impact. And at a certain point in the campaign career in the grassroots side, I just wasn't seeing that anymore. The conversation became more about the candidate themselves or some conversation that really wasn't focused on the details, focused on the things that matter, things that like good ideas, good plans. And it became this, how do we get a rise out of people? And it became really frustrating at a certain point. And I started looking for new opportunities that would allow me to make the impact that I always wanted to, which led me to the policy space. And I grew up in just outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia, and where I still currently reside. And growing up in a city and living in a city, it really does make you appreciate getting back out to nature and getting back in touch with the world at large, right? And in addition to that, I also got to see a lot of energy consumption on a large scale growing up in a city. So it really gave me an early appreciation for the total usage of energy, but also the need for people to reconnect with the environment and nature and making sure that that's all still a big part of not only American life, but day-to-day life. And so from there, I was recently external outreach associate with the Mercatus Center, and I was working on some policies there that were really interesting to me. That there was on global overfishing and critical mineral supply chains. And what was really interesting about that was it started getting me to look at different organizations as I was doing my outreach. And growing up, I was surrounded by conservatives, even in my early career. And it seemed that I was the only conservative that seemed to hold the belief that nothing's more conservative than conserving our environment and our energy and keeping America beautiful, as well as allowing for total and holistic engagement in the energy market space, which I believe can come from clean energy, right? It's a whole nother window that will make market prices compete with each other. And so while I was doing some outreach, I discovered the American Conservation Coalition, which led me to the treasure trove of other conservative clean energy thinkers. And it was such a relief. It was so it was so exciting to find other conservatives that thought like I did. And our CEN was founded by Mark Bichet, and I was so fortunate that he had the courage that I wish that I had to say, this is something that can be thought of from a conservative mindset and a free market standpoint. And by golly, I'm going to build something that does that. And I was really, really pleased to find CEN. I'm really thankful that he did that because it has given me a home doing something that I really, truly love. And so From there, I, found CEN, um, started, I guess, boy, it's been almost 2 months now. This feels like forever though. Um, you don't know, sometimes you miss home even when you don't even know
Yeah.
you have a home. But that's been kind of my journey to this point, and it has just been wonderful.
It's so wonderful to hear that you have been able to find a home with conservatives that care and that are able to align with your interest and sit in this belief that clean energy is one of the ways that we can do it. We can innovate, we can secure our grid and just raise raise our profile across the board. So I'm so happy
Absolutely.
to hear that your journey has led you here. I'm sorry to hear that you sounded that you felt alone before, but so happy that you found a home here with some conservatives that care.
Just makes me appreciate you all more. That's all that did.
Our audience might not know, but our organization consists of a national network of state-based organizations that are all advocating for a conservative, fact-based approach to American energy. Connor, can you give us some examples of CEN state-based policy wins and progress this year and what might be the impact nationwide?
Sure. So one of the big wins this year was in Texas, and this year being 2023. Um, in Texas, they were able to slow the progression and potentially have it die in committee, but still sitting there. So hopefully that persists of two bills, SB 624 and SB 7, that were essentially going to make it a little bit more complicated for clean energy generators to get up and running and added to the grid. So very, very happy to see that uh, is stymied, especially because permitting is already so difficult for clean energy generators. And any more red tape is going to do nobody any good. So that's really great, and I applaud the people down there in Texas for doing that. Our team, Matt Welsh and all that. And Florida was another win this year, I think, because they found that their one of the bills that was coming through was a EV tax fee, and uh, one of the things they were trying to do was get a fee assigned, and we were able to get that off. That was SB 1070, and they've actually reintroduced it for 2024. So hopefully, our continued education from our team down there will allow for better education on that from other legislators, and even have a harder no on that. And that's what's right for that state. That's our state teams are, given that purview to decide if that's a right thing for their states. And EVs are big in Florida right now. So it makes a lot of sense. And we're very proud of the people down there for doing what they've done to educate our lawmakers. I think one of the, if that's kind of like we stopped some bad policy. Talking about getting some good policy introduced, Wisconsin this past year was able to form enough legislators and talk to enough folks that we ended up seeing a community solar bill be introduced. Didn't make it very far. However, the conversation has now been started. And what community solar is essentially is basically removing the utility provider from the equation and adding the ability to take solar and bring it to a community localized from smaller grids. And essentially, each consumer would get a tax credit to their utility bill that would save them money in the long run. And so that's one of the really important options that both CEN and I hope people in general would want to see available to the individual consumer, energy consumer. So very, very happy to see that introduced, and hopefully we'll see legislation similarly introduced next year and move a little bit farther along in the process, hopefully resulting in bigger wins. But other states could definitely take a take a lesson from that. And if they're, they're looking for opportunity for how can we make things easier for energy providers, allow for community solar. Make it law that it's an option. Kayla, one of the things I would say, though, more than any specific policy, is the work that we do in all of our states on educating and advocating. The education component is really the most important because there's so much about it that is just about energy policy that is really unknown and it's really tricky. And it's important to have resources and at least a foundational understanding of the way the system works right now and the way that the regulatory process works right now, because then people can start to identify the problems that need the solutions, right? They can start to craft those good ideas, the real reforms that make a financial and a social impact on everyday lives and everyday pocketbooks. So as we continue moving forward, I know that the CEN state teams will continue doing their education. They do their task force, they do their events. And that's actually, I think, the most important of anything that we do.
Excited to see that state advocacy and education impact just continue to grow and multiply throughout their state and nationwide. It sounds like we've had some good wins and some good stops this year, which I would like to qualify as a win. Any progress is good progress.
No kidding. That's
Wonderful.
why they call it a fight, right? There's going to be some wins, some losses, but so long as we're staying in the conversation and we're not giving up our seat at the table, we're going to see good change.
I like that. A fight is going to have some wins and losses. Hopefully we have some more wins than we do.
Yes, looking forward to them.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you all for sticking with us. We will be back shortly with CEN Policy Manager Connor Marley. Thanks for sticking with us. You're listening to the Conservative Energy Podcast, and I'm your host, Kayla Ventura, back with CEN Policy Manager Connor Marley. Connor, when it comes to clean energy policies, what types do you see conservative policymakers embracing?
Great question. In my conversations that I've had with folks, both in the energy policy space on the conservative side, on the moderate side, as well as your average conservative in my neighborhood and in my interactions with folks in the community. The thing that people really want to talk about right now is China and the China threat to our economy and our jobs. And I think one of the things that's often left out of that conversation, but should be brought in at least for the energy discussion, is dependency on China. Right now, we have a pretty severe dependency on China for refining of critical minerals that are necessary for clean energy. And breaking that up, I think, is going to be a very well received talking point with conservatives. One of the things that also needs to be addressed, and I know this is across the board, conservatives are interested in doing this right now, is permitting reform. And this is essentially the red tape reduction of clean energy's ability to come to the process, make it through the process in a reasonable amount of time with a low cost, and be able to provide the new opportunity for the energy generation that they would have been looking to produce. Already, we're looking at like 20 years is the threshold for the need for planning. And on average, it can go from 7 to 20 on getting through the process. It's really extreme right now, and there's not a whole lot of streamlined methods to get us to where we need to be on the regulatory side, because so many agencies have the ability to impose new regulation, and it creates a big problem. So I would actually add to that maybe even better intercommunication between departmental agencies and executive agencies, because it's a really big travesty right now in what we have available to us that's trying to get through the process to become online and get energy output into our grid. And they just can't. They're sitting there waiting. And that's a it's just, I mean, I like in my head, like it really doesn't make sense, quite frankly. So especially when you talk about like needing renewable energy, needing clean energy on the grid. I mean, that's Biden administration is talking about that consistently, and they're the biggest like perpetrators of making it harder to make that happen. Confusing. One of the other things I think would be, speaking of the grid, actually, yeah, like grid reliability and security. So making sure that we have enough energy on the grid or power on the grid to meet demand, meet potential needs. So the security aspect and reliability aspect was most visibly seen when the Winter Storm Uri came through recently, and created all those problems on getting of energy to the places that were most needed at that time. So getting intertransmission between the regions better established, as well as growing energy intra-regionally, is just an absolute must. It really is, to give us that security, and know that the average person doesn't have to worry if the storm's coming. It's going to be bad, but it's going to be okay in terms of like, you're not going to die, right? Which it really did. I mean, it happened.
Yeah.
That's incredibly problematic, and it's incumbent on the government a little bit to protect its citizens and make for the option of securing that grid.
Looking at Winter Storm Uri, I often thought after that, do we take advantage of being able to flick the light switch and know that it's going to turn on when I need power in my home? And I think the answer to that is absolutely. We take advantage of that, and we don't know how fragile our grid truly is. And if we don't think about ways to secure it, modernize it, and bring these innovative energy systems to it, I might not get the same response when I go to flip my light, which is, as a citizen, terrifying.
Right. There's an element of this where when we just saw what we just saw with the pandemic, this was an event that was not properly planned for, and not considered reality. It wasn't seen as something that was going to happen. We should prep for this. We see the potential for issues within the grid now. We didn't get any indication for the pandemic, but we're seeing potential for issues in the grid now. This is something that not only lawmakers, but also the average citizen should be considering. How is it that my lights turn on? Will they always, no matter what, will they turn on? Could something happen that makes them not turn on? If so, can I talk to my legislators? Can I engage with ITOs and RTOs in some way to communicate my desire to make sure I'm protected, my family's protected? That's crucial. It is really just understanding and knowing that there is a whole process that goes into giving you your day-to-day needs, charging your computer, turning on your lamp, all of it. Care. That's as simply put as I can be. Care about it, because there's things you can do to help make sure those things stay on. That electricity gets to you when you need it. Right? It's always some other town, some other place until it happens to you. Let's make sure it doesn't happen to you.
Like that.
And, Kayla, something that's intrinsic and paramount within conservative thought is free market competition. This is the entirety of what we're trying to do at the Conservative Energy Network, is bring the idea of free market competition back to the conversation, for conservatives to understand that the more options that are available to provide lower cost energy will drive down market prices and increase competition to bring out the best, most readily produced, and for the lowest cost options to energy consumers at a price point that is best for their wallet. And we need to have that happen in every possible way, right? This is something that all conservatives would be getting on board with from the basis of allowing for business to thrive and allowing for the capitalist nature that our country is in to fully actualize. What this also does is it creates a lot of good jobs. Clean energy has high paying, quality jobs, and that is something that conservatives looking to see Americans thrive are going to want to support.
And then thinking about the year ahead, when it comes to CEN's policy priorities for next year, what should our audience be on the lookout for?
Sure. I mean, it's a lot of what we just talked about with what's going to appeal to conservative policymakers. We're going to be talking about transmission investment, making sure that we have enough energy generators that can provide for where the grid might be years later. That permitting reform that we talked about earlier that I pontificated on at length will definitely be something that we're consistently and continuously being engaged in, especially at the state level, but we'll also be keeping an eye on federal policy as well to see how that's going to affect our state's ability to make that process simpler. One of the things I know we want to get into that I talked about, I think in my earlier answers, was community solar and making sure that that is an option for people, but also that they know about it and are educated on how that will be produced. You know, it's not going to, is there ways to make it not an eyesore? Yes, there is, right? So that kind of thing, making sure people just understand the ins and outs of it and the potential concerns to be readily and fully addressed and explained so that people are not, and we want people to be using an option because they feel comfortable with an option, but nobody can feel comfortable with anything until they have a full understanding of it and understand the trade-offs, so to speak. I mean, you don't go to a mall and buy the first suit jacket you see, right? If you're looking for a suit jacket, you may want to price check online a little bit. Or you may want to check out a couple other stores, figure out, is this the style I want? Is this going to fall apart in 2 years? Is this right? Am I willing to pay a little bit more for something of higher quality? Am I willing to, is this price point in my budget? These are the things that you really want to ask yourselves. I guess these are the types of questions you want to be asking yourself as you consider new energy options. It's just like any other type of purchase, I suppose.
And quite an important purchase as well. One of the things that you talked about in your answer was community solar. If you're looking to learn more, CEN in hand with the Coalition for Community Solar Access actually launched a new coalition this year called the Community Solar Freedom Coalition. You can learn more by going to www.communitysolarfreedom.org. You can learn about community solar, sign up, join other like-minded conservatives that are advocating for community solar across the nation. Connor, I want to ask something that's a little fun and maybe a little personal, but if you had an executive order wish, so you could just wave a magic wand and put into effect any energy policy, what would it be? And what existing problem would this solution fix?
On principle, I don't like the idea of any executive waving magic wands and making sole decisions on things.
Of course.
We fought a war on that issue. But no, to your actual question, boy, that is a great question. I think it's about cleaning up our supply chain, America's supply chain to critical minerals, because we do have a dependency on China right now to get them refined. I believe I mentioned that earlier, and if I didn't, essentially they're the only country that has the ability to refine the critical minerals at the rate that we need to see the level of clean energy generation be produced to address future energy needs from our grid. So one of the ways that I think would be the best to do that, and this is just, I speak for myself, not CEN. This is obviously not something I've talked to anybody about yet. However, the answer to your question is going to be critical mineral clubs. It's essentially regional. In essence, it's like a regional trade agreement with other countries that will allow for lower cost to the uh, critical minerals needed, potentially help develop refineries more localized in China. Because essentially the way the supply chain works now is you get the critical minerals and you still have to ship them out to China to get uh, refined and then bring them back in or to the other countries that they're produced in, to build the actual clean energy tools and machinery. And so one of the things I think that it will really help do is decrease our dependency on China, but also potentially shore up new diplomatic relationships with other countries, work with third world countries or developing countries that could really use that type of industry to help provide better lives for their populations, but also lower costs to our consumers here. So I really do see this as a all-encompassing win, uh, especially in just decreasing dependency on China. We got to get rid of that. So, and from a more altruistic sense, we want to be working with a broader range of people and engaging in the global market and global economy, so that we're seeing the lowest prices be given to America, and we're also seeing our allies and other countries that want to see us engage better on climate, engage better in greener technologies. We're rewarding that engagement, I would say, and China is not. Right.
What an interesting idea. I hope to see this come into effect one day. Some regional critical mineral, what do we call them? Clubs? I kind of like that.
The clubs,
Little
yeah,
clubs.
it's kind of like a country club, except really, really clean energy. Really,
I love it. I love it.
there's no, yeah, it should lower costs. I guess it's like a country club, except it'll lower costs instead of make you pay an exorbitant amount.
Yes. That's a good distinction to make there.
Right.
I don't want to associate country club costs with low ones. So
Right. Yes. Yes. So strike that from the record, please.
wonderful. Well, I appreciate your answer here, and I just have one more for you, and that is, what are your hopes, Connor, for our clean energy future?
Sure. Uh, my overarching hope is that America embraces an all of the above approach to energy policy and energy generation, and is given this, and that energy, that clean energy, is given the same accessibility and support that historically other methods of energy generation was in the past. What I think that will lead to, and what another large hope of mine is, and the reason I wanted to get engaged in policy, back to question one, right? The reason I wanted to get engaged in policy, the reason I wanted to switch from campaigns and grassroots, was to make an impact. And the overarching hope that I would also like to see is that more money is in the pockets of average everyday Americans, so that they can put that money best to where it is best served. And that's the kind of thing that only the individual knows. But having more money to pay for the, piano teacher down the street's lesson because your kid wants to learn the piano, or buying a little bit healthier food because you'd like to just make sure your family is a little bit, has that option if they want to be a little bit healthier. If they, you need a new bed because you've been using the same one for 30 years, right? Like these are the little things that really do make a difference in the everyday lives of people and sometimes are needed to see a longer term effect of positive good. And they can't do that if we keep giving it to the government or giving it to larger potential monopolies, quite frankly. And they're not, and those decisions and of how that money's going to be spent are made for them. And so that's really overall my hope, and I think it's something worth fighting for.
Yes, yes. I love that, using energy policy to really increase the life of our citizens, get that money back into their pockets and let them improve their lives in the way that they should be. Let's let the government create the energy in the best and most affordable way, or more so, get out of the way so a free market can erupt and be providing affordable, reliable energy at that low cost for us all. That's quite a good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, while we work in collective goods, we are a nation of individuals and they all have their own needs and they should be respected.
I like that. I like that a lot. Connor, anything else you would like to leave our audience with, or can you let them know where they can connect with you?
Sure. Well, you can connect with me via my email. It's cmarley@conservativeenergynetwork.org. You can also go to the CEN website and subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that there's more information coming your way about what we're all working on. But I'm available to anybody and that wants to talk energy policy and looking to learn a little bit more. Happy to connect with you. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Don't feel that weird insecurity that people feel when they're like, oh, does he really mean this? Yeah, I do actually. I really enjoy my job and I enjoy talking to people about it. So I'm happy to connect anytime. And I'll leave you with this, and it's something I said earlier, and that's care. And the people that in your life that don't have those conversations. Be an educator like our teams in the States and ourselves try to be, and make sure people know that this is a policy area worth discussing and that has a lot of needs right now, but also a lot of opportunities. And good things can come if we all decide that we want them to exist. So pick up the torch, lead the way out of the darkness, and I appreciate you all for listening. Thanks for listening to my ramblings.
Thank you, Connor, and thank you for joining me today on the Conservative Energy Podcast. It was great to have you here. If you're looking to listen to our podcast or find us somewhere else, we're available on Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. You can learn more about the Conservative Energy Network by visiting www.conservativeenergynetwork.org. You can also find us on Twitter or X @ConsEnergyNet, on Facebook @Conservative Energy Network, and on LinkedIn @Conservative Energy Network. Thanks for listening in. I hope you have a great day.